Great to be here. Yesterday I met already some of you. Great event during the network event yesterday evening. And thanks for the introduction. And then, well, I'm an economist. And then maybe you all think, what does an economist do at the Crane Summit? And you know, I also don't know. No. Of course I know. At ING we have a research department like every bank. And we have the macroeconomists who follow the interest rates and the import tariffs and the euro and the dollar and all this kind of stuff which are very important and all affect your business. But what makes us special is that we also have a department with sector economists. These sector economists, they follow the specific branches where you are active in. We have someone for retail, someone for manufacturing, someone for wholesale, and I'm in charge of the construction sector. And we do that because we want to understand the market. 95% of our research published on our website to help you, our clients, and everybody who is involved to make better financial and strategic decisions. And that's also what I want to do today. We're going to have a look at the construction sector, your clients, but also our clients. And we also have a lot of contractors that are active in the construction sector, of course. And we're going to look at, well, the sector is struggling a bit, but I'm also going to tell you about what I think is the forgotten market of the construction sector, which is a very interesting market, a very piece of the market that we focus more on. But I just want to start with setting the scene a bit. Well, how is the economic environment at the moment? And then I think three things are really important at the moment, as we probably all know, but just to focus on. The first is, and now I have the same problem as the previous speaker. Oh, no, there it is. Well, we have a lot of geopolitical uncertainty. Political uncertainty. Populist parties are popping up. They want to have other policies, but there's also geopolitical uncertainty. We have the war in Ukraine, what's going to happen in Venezuela, conflict still in the Middle East. That makes people uncertain. And when they are uncertain, they stop spending money quite often, and especially when it is about something big like a house or a company that has to invest in a new premises. So this is something that is really important. The second thing is import tariffs. They are skyrocketing at the moment. Some are come down a bit, but every economist can tell you since 200 years, my favorite economist came with a fantastic model about trade, David Ricardo. He can show you that world trade or trade between two countries is beneficial for both countries. And well, what is happening at the moment with the trade, with the import tariffs, that you make that less possible. And the third thing I would like to mention is that here in Europe we have to invest in our defense. We have complied with the NATO rule, all the countries that are a NATO member, that we're going to invest at least 3.5% of our GDP in defense and 1.5% in infrastructure, and that is money that we can't spend on other things, unfortunately. And you can say, okay, yeah, but it's an investment, it's going to stimulate our economies. That is partly true because many countries in Europe also have labor shortages, and when people move to the military, they can't be a teacher at that moment. And the money we spend on defense, quite often many of these equipment we import, we can't spend on health or sustainability or education or drinks at evening or holiday. It is money that we have to spend on our peace, our freedom, and of course that is very important, but before it was something that we took for granted. How is this affecting the different sectors? And then we're going to dive into some graphs. Here you see the development of several sectors in Europe, how their volume has developed in the last couple of years. And one sector directly stands out, the technology sector. It is because, well, economies are digitalizing. This is also happening in Europe, that has led to a lot of growth in that branch. And we also think that will continue. We have investments in AI, of course, but also cybersecurity is important. It's also part of this. And that are reasons why we think this sector will see a future growth. And it's not only moonlight and roses in this sector, because there are also a lot of bankruptcies quite often. Many startups start and that have to close their doors. So high growth rate, but also a higher risk sector. Then in the middle we see the transport and the retail sector. Wages have increased. Purchasing power in Europe was low after we had high price increases, high inflation, but wages are catching up. So consumers, they can spend more. Not all of them are doing that at the moment because also of the uncertainty, but no big declines anymore in that sector. And then at the bottom we see two sectors where most of you are exposed to. The chemical sector. This sector faces high energy costs, and the sector is very energy intensive. And the other thing is that there is overcapacity worldwide in this sector that also increases the competition and results in lower volumes in the European chemistry industry. The other one is the construction sector. And well, what amazes me in the last couple of years is that it is on a quite stable line. And that also shows the next graph. Here I only zoom into the construction sector. Well, during COVID we saw the enormous decline. Many construction sites were closed, especially in Spain and France. But after that it's more or less stable, but that doesn't count for the whole sector. There are enormous differences between the subsectors of the construction sector. And when we dive into the different subsectors, then I will start with the building sector, which mainly consists of non-residential and residential new building. And that sector faces lower volumes. That is due to less productivity in housing. The number of new houses are declining in many countries in Europe because interest rates have decreased several years ago, and also building costs increased, and that made many new projects less profitable for project developers, and that resulted in lower volumes. However, there are also some sectors that performing better, and that is the infrastructure sector. Many governments are still investing in new infrastructure projects. We have EU investment funds that mainly went also to southern countries, and they have invested that directly, and that also results in better volumes, and also all kinds of new infrastructure, I call it, like infrastructure that we need for the energy transition and to protect us against climate change. Think about waterworks, but also energy grids. All these kind of investments are also part of the infrastructure sector. And then, I've been explaining about what we saw happening in the last years, but of course we want to know what is going to happen in the coming years if you have investment plans. And are there already some signs of improvement? And then one of the indicators I quite often use is the development of the order books of contractors. Your clients, also our clients, when they receive more orders, it's probably that we're also going to receive more assignments. And here you see this shows is a survey among European contractors, and the question is, are you satisfied? And well, you can say there are quite pessimistic people because most of the time it's below zero, while production still grew during that period. But I don't look at that way. I look at the development, and then you see, yeah, that it's reached a new level, a lower level. But it looks like we see some improvement. Not very convincing yet, but when you're an optimist, and it looks like you see some improvement. However, this is for whole Europe, but it doesn't count for all the countries. And that is what I want to show in this graph. Here makes a step further. It's not only the order books, but about the whole confidence in the market. And then two countries are standing out in a positive way: the Netherlands, and many of my fellow country citizens still don't agree, but we still need more production. We have housing shortages. We need a higher production compared to other countries. The Dutch market is still performing pretty well. And Spain, it looks like very positive, but we have to remember that they come back from very low levels after the financial crisis. So they are in a positive mood. The whole Spanish economy is performing better than other European countries, and that also results in a better performing of the construction sector in Spain. However, at the other end of the spectrum, there are two large countries, European countries, and that are Germany and France. Yeah, these countries are struggling already for many years. They really have to reform their economies. France is having enormous budget deficit, they have to transform the economy more to a more dynamic economy, and it doesn't really start. And in Germany, almost the same. The car industry is suffering in Germany because electrification. They are behind it. They face high energy costs, also creating a population. And when you're working at a Volkswagen factory and you're not sure whether you're going to have your job next week or next month, that's not the moment that you're going to buy a new house. And that results in lower construction volumes. However, it looks like there's some improvement in Germany. It looks like in Germany change is starting. Like they have plans for an enormous investment program for the infrastructure. Germany infrastructure is really in a dire state. 500 billion euros they want to invest. And also for the housing market, they try to speed up the housing projects, Bauturbo as they call it, to hopefully that things start to happen. And housing is very important. It is a large share of the construction sector. And not only existing house, not only new houses, prices of new houses depend on the prices of existing houses. Why is that? Because the consumer, he can choose when he buys a house, he can buy a new house or an existing house. So those two prices can't deviate too much. Otherwise, somebody will choose for the cheaper option. And that is also what this graph shows. That countries in the corner below, France, Italy, in the last 10 years, they have shown very low increases of the house prices of existing houses, but also of low increases of new house prices. And in the right top, you see Poland and the Netherlands. They have witnessed high increases of the house prices of existing houses. And also, project developers in that case are able to demand a higher price for the new developments. And that is very important because we have seen enormous building cost increases during the energy crisis. So if those prices don't increase of the existing houses, project developers aren't able to demand a higher price for the new houses, and then it will result in that projects aren't profitable, and they're not going to build them. This is just, I've plotted some dots of the countries, but I also want to show you how it has developed in time. And then you see this for the European Union. For a long time, both prices of the existing and new houses follow each other, but for, 4 years ago, we saw another movement. Prices of existing houses started to decline. What happened? Well, the interest rates went up and people were just reluctant to buy a new house because there was a lot of uncertainty when the Ukraine war started, and then house prices of existing houses, they declined. But it wasn't possible for project developers to decline their prices because they were faced with expensive building land, which they already had bought, and increasing cost of building materials. So they had to increase their prices, but that was not good for the new development of new houses. While we have such enormous shortages in many European countries, in many cities. And what you see, there is still a gap. The prices of existing houses, they have started to improve, but there is still a gap. So that means that new houses are still more expensive than existing houses. And that makes it that it is still a difficult market. However, I see some light at the end of the tunnel. And one of the indicators that I often use is the issuing of building permits. So for a new house you need a building permit, and that gives a good indication of future developments. And here you see the enormous drop after 2022. Project developers, they had enough projects in their portfolio which they weren't able to sell, so they stopped for requiring new permits. But now slowly, during 2025, you slowly see that there's going to be some improvement. I expect, when we won't see any big other changes, that this market will slowly start to improve, and especially because there is such an enormous demand for affordable housing in many European cities. But also here, there are large differences between countries. And that shows this graph. This is the development of the building permits, but then per country during the last year. And then, Germany and France and Poland are still lagging behind. But we also see some countries where the number of issued permits has increased enormously. And that is Sweden and Spain. And again, for Spain, I'm coming back from very low levels. They really have to do some catch-up growth. And something about the same accounts for Sweden. Sweden has seen a decline of 70% of the issued permits in this couple of years. The Swedes, you think, they search for security, but they have such a belief in their own market that they don't fix their mortgages for 10 years, but they all have short interest rates, like 3 months or 6 months. And that made them even more vulnerable than other countries when those interest rates increased. Now we talked about new construction, and that is also where people think about when they think about the construction sector, and then we think about this fancy, big, large, sexy new buildings. But there is another market, which I often call the forgotten market of the construction sector, which is huge. And that is the renovation sector. Renovation works are more than 50% of the total construction volume in Europe. More than 50%, and that are the plumbers, the carpenters, installation works, the people that fix your sink, or repair your roof. Quite often smaller companies, but it is huge, and it is growing, as I show here. And that is because all kinds of sustainability works are also part of the construction, of the renovation market. So this is an enormous market, and but also it has differences between countries. Especially well-developed countries have high rates of the renovation sector. That market is bigger. Two reasons. Quite often they have a larger stock which has to be renovated or refurbished quite often. And also countries that are catching up, like Poland or Czechia, they are investing more in new infrastructure because, well, they need it. They haven't built that before. So those countries have also large new construction sectors, which makes the renovation sector relatively small. So the first thing is why I think this is an interesting market is because the size is enormous. But the second thing that makes this a very interesting market, also for us as a banker, and I think maybe also for you, is that it is a very stable market. Here you see the growth rates of the renovation sector of the last 15 years or so. And okay, it has its ups and downs, but nothing compared to the new building sector. It's the blue line that represents. When there is a crisis, companies, they stop investing. And they're not going to build this new office. I said it before, consumers, they think twice before they're going to buy a house. And at that moment we see a decline in new construction. However, the renovation market is a very stable market. When your roof leaks, you have to repair it. And it even works a bit counterproductive. When you're not going to buy a new house because you're afraid of that it's going to be too expensive, that you're not going to have your job, then quite often people think, okay, then let's refurbish my old house, my current house, and then I just add the dormer and we paint it, and then we're also happy to stay here. And all these kind of works that are also refurbishment or part of the renovation market. Well, we talked about prices. The prices are, of course, very important for you, for your clients, and for everybody. And what do we expect? How these are going to develop? Well, we have seen an enormous price increase during the energy crisis, also in construction and maybe building materials like concrete and bricks. They are very energy intensive to produce. This is what this graph shows. That during this period, many contractors, it's a survey, they said, yes, I have to increase my prices in the coming 3 months. In the last couple of months, we don't see that much of price increases. There's a little, it points a little bit up. Maybe that's because of the prices of steel will maybe change in a year or so because of the import tariffs we have now. We have changed in Europe. But in general, contractors say, no, I'm not going to increase my price. Also because there's still a very competitive market. And when you want to get an assignment, then quite often you're not going to raise your price. So this could also mean for you that when your client, your contractor says, okay, yeah, sorry, but I can't pass your higher price through my client. No, that is what this shows. And he's probably saying what other contractors are saying as well. But also here, large differences between countries. In the Netherlands, still many builders are planning to increase their prices because there's just overcapacity, a shortage of capacity, and that gives them the opportunity to demand a higher price. And at the bottom we see those markets that are struggling, France and Germany. There's more supply of building services. That makes it also for them difficult to increase their profits and their price. Then I go to one of my last slides about the forecast. What do we expect for the several countries? And then we start at the bottom here, and there we find the larger countries, France and Spain. France still struggling. They really have to reform their economy, but there are all kinds of political issues. Spain, we see high growth rates at the moment in Spain, but we have to remember that they are coming back from those low levels. The production levels in Spain in the building sector increased by more than 25%. So they're still not back at that level. Then here in the middle, the European Union as a whole, and then two countries that perform better are the Netherlands and also Poland. Poland has a really growing economy. They received a lot of money from EU funds for a while. It stopped. That's also why we see this decline in 2023, because they had some problems with their government. And the European Union didn't want to invest in Poland anymore. There's a new government at the moment, so it looks like those problems have disappeared. And we expect that they're going to invest again more in infrastructure. Also, enormous housing shortages in Poland, so we expect that the growth will pick up again in Poland. And somewhere in the middle, twice. Germany. It's not as bad as France. Looks like they are slowly going to change that they're going to invest more, and we think that the first sign of that these investments we will see in 2026. So my main takeaways. First, I think the renovation market is a really very interesting market. It's huge. And it's a very stable market. And for every company, I think that is very interesting. The housing market is slowly showing signs of recovery in Europe. And we see that permits are slowly starting to increase. And we don't expect any high price increases in the coming period for construction. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to you, Alex.
Thank you very much, Maurice. I'd like to think that someone's going to take an opportunity to ask you a question. We do have someone.
Yeah, Joel Landis. It was interesting. That was a great presentation, by the way. Thank you. I was curious how much organized labor is the labor pool in the EU. Is it mostly organized or not organized?
Organized, but they are a union member.
Yeah, union. Yeah.
I don't know. I have to admit, but I know that staff. Labor is a real problem in many European countries. More than 20% of the European countries or contractors, they complain about that they don't have enough labor to finish all their projects. And we have grading, and also for the construction sector counts that the labor productivity is low. And we still don't see a real increase in that, which is very important when you want to work more efficiently.
Chris Slide from Off-Highway Research. Your forecast just then for Germany was kind of quite modest, quite subdued. Do you see that getting better as the years go by? Because obviously there's a big political commitment in Germany to renew infrastructure. Are we at the start of something a bit more positive, or do you see it as fairly modest?
I think it will gradually start to improve. Right? They are planning to invest in 500 billion in their infrastructure, and I cross twice a year Germany by car, and well, then you know that it's a really bad state, especially when you're coming back from Poland. They're super perfect highways, so they also have to do that, and it's not only good for construction investment, but the infrastructure is good for the whole economy. And they also try to speed up the building processes. When you build have the plans for new houses, quite often takes 10 years. And the first 8 years is just discussing to try to get the permits, and then 2 years of building. And they try to shorten that period. They call it the Bauturbo in German. To speed up that process, that projects come earlier to the market. Yeah, but this will be gradual, like many things in the construction sector. Right? It's not going to change overnight.
2 questions, please. In recent years, what effect might immigration have had on any of the data that you displayed? And second question, at a high level, how do you suspect your European data might compare to other regions around the world?
First question about immigration, yeah, that's twofold. Immigrants, they need also houses, and in many countries there is a shortage of houses. But also many immigrants, they work in construction. As I mentioned earlier, we need their hands, because we have labor shortages of the graying population. Now I forgot your second question.
How does your data?
Oh, okay, yeah. Of course, yeah. Well, these are more developed countries in general in Europe, so we are approximately on the line of the US. But of course, growth rates in China, in the Middle East, and in Asia are far higher. If you give me your card, I have a graph of that, so if you give me your card, I can send it to you.
Any other questions? Well, I have a quick question about the growth in renovation. How much part of that do you think is sustainability and related to that?
Good question, because I just wanted to mention that during the presentation, but I forgot. If you think back about the graph, there's one period that the renovation rate overshoots the new building sector, and that is during the energy crisis. At that moment, we all wanted to have solar panels, heat pump, insulate our house, and that are all activities that we see as a part of the renovation sector. And I think that will remain, will continue, not at those high levels during the energy crisis. But yeah, we have to insulate our houses, and maybe for sustainability, but also because energy prices will become higher in coming years due to all kinds of taxes, but also energy prices are high. We don't have our own sources in Europe, so we have to make a change to renewable energies, and that demands all kinds of investments in our real estate.
Good.